So today's lesson is going to be on naming acids. And we're going to start with a binary acid. A binary acid contains two different elements. Acids typically start with a hydrogen. So anytime we start with a hydrogen in the formula, it's going to be an acid. Now in this example, you'll notice that we have hydrogen and we have chlorine. So we have two elements. Now it does not matter the number of each. If you look at number 2, for example, we have 2 hydrogens and 1 sulfur. So there's 3 total atoms, but there's only 2 individual elements, the hydrogen and the sulfur. So to name a binary acid, if we take our look at our example, HCl, and we name it hydrogen chloride, as we would have named a covalent compound, because hydrogen and chlorine are both nonmetals, so we name it as if it is a covalent compound. And then we're going to make a couple of adjustments. Instead of writing hydrogen, we're going to change the hydrogen to hydro. And IDE is going to become IC. So the chloride becomes chloric, and then we add in the name acid after "-ne". So hydrochloric acid. So what I'd like for you to do, I'd like for you to pause this video and try these 4 practice problems on your naming acids worksheet, which is online, and then you can unpause the video and check your answers. Okay, so let's check how you did. HBr. So hydrogen becomes hydro. Bromide becomes bromic. And then we just add in the word acid. Number 2. Again, hydrogen becomes hydro. And the sulfide becomes sulfuric acid. HF. Hydrogen again is hydro. Fluoride is fluoric acid. Hydrofluoric acid. And finally, HI. This would be hydroiodic acid. The iodide becomes iodic. So our binary acids, I think, are pretty straightforward. Our oxyacids are a little bit more tricky. So ultimately what we have here, if we start with the PO4, that is the 8 polyatomic ion, phosphate. The 8 is going to become an ick. So when we look at phosphate, phosphate is PO4, 3 minus. All right, so the 8 becomes the ick. So in an oxyacid, you're going to look for the polyatomic ion. We don't put in a hydro. We simply name, instead of phosphate, it becomes an ick, so phosphoric. And then we add in the term acid. Now, if there is one additional oxygen, so notice phosphoric acid, that 8 polyatomic ion has 4 oxygens. In the example above, there are 5 oxygens. So we still keep the phosphoric acid the same, but we're adding in a per. That per tells us that this acid has 1 oxygen more than the 8 polyatomic ion. Now, PO3 is phosphite. The ite is going to become OUS. So instead of writing phosphoric acid, we're writing phosphorus acid. And the OUS tells us that the polyatomic ion is the ite, ITE, polyatomic ion. Now, in our example below, we have one less oxygen than the ite. So we had 3 oxygens in phosphite. Here I only have 2. I have 1 less. So what do we notice? We still have the phosphorus acid as we did in the ite, but we're adding in a hypo. So the prefix hypo tells us that we have 1 less oxygen than the ite polyatomic ion. So what I'd like for you to do, I'd like for you to pause this video, and you're going to try these practice examples, and then you're going to unpause it and check your work. All right, so let's check our work. H2SO4. What do we notice about H2SO4? H2SO4, SO4 is sulfate, ATE. So it's important to know those polyatomic ions from our element and ion quizzes. All right, so the 8 is going to become ic. So this is going to be sulfuric acid. All right, IO2. Well, from our polyatomic ion quizzes that we took, we found that IO3 minus was the 8. So we have 1 less oxygen than the 8, so that is the ite. IO2 is the ite, iodite. So we're going to change that ite to us, and it's going to become iodous acid. All right, let's look at the next one. CO4. CO3, 2 minus is the 8. Chromate. So I have 1 additional oxygen. So I'm going to make this chromic, and I'm going to put in a per. Since there's 1 additional oxygen, it's perchromic acid. All right, SO2. We saw that the 8, SO4, is sulfate. SO3 is sulfite, ITE. I have 1 less oxygen than the ite. So the ite is going to become an us, and I'm going to add in this hypo as well since I have 1 less oxygen. So this is going to be hypo sulfurous acid. All right, let's come over and let's practice writing our formulas. Chloric. Ic tells me it's the 8, so chlorate is ClO3 minus. So when I write this formula, I have a minus sign. If I have an H plus, because I start with a hydrogen, and I swap and drop, all right, I'm going to swap and drop just like I would with an ionic compound here because we have this polyatomic ion, and I'm going to end up with HClO3. Nitrous acid. The us tells me that it is nitrite, ITE, whoops, which is NO2 minus. So when I swap and drop H plus and NO2 minus, again, we have polyatomic ions, so we're going to use our swap and drop rules. We end up with HNO2. If you're not sure about the swap and drop rules, you may want to go back and look at the video that is on polyatomic ions and ionic compounds as well. All right, persulfuric acid. Ic and per. So the ic would be sulfate, but I have a per. So instead of being sulfate, sulfate, SO4, is going to be SO5 2 minus. Because remember, sulfate is SO4 2 minus. So the per tells me I have one additional oxygen, SO5. So when I swap and drop, I get H2SO5. Hypochlorous. So the us, that tells me that I am the ite. Chlorite is ClO2 minus. The hypo tells me that I have one less oxygen. So that's ClO minus. So again, when I swap and drop H plus and ClO minus, I get HClO, hypochlorous acid.